In this video, I'm going to do a brief tutorial on how to mount and install the DasMikro V5 gyro into an LDRC 1803. But it's the same setup usually for any of the LDRC cars, the 1801, 02, 04, the 1899, or all the models. It should be roughly about the same thing if you want to run an external gyro. This is how the gyro board looks when you get it. And then you get this little connector along with it as well, just one of them. And this is a 4-pin connector that goes to the back connector here, and it has a 3-pin and a random 1-pin over here to the side. So the front connector here is for your servo to plug into, and the first pin off to the right here would be ground, and then middle's power, and then that would be to the left would be the signal pin. And then for the back 4, from the right it would be ground, and then power, and then signal for channel 1 would be that 3rd pin, and then the 4th pin would be signal for channel 3. If you were going to run an aftermarket receiver, you would want to plug in this little connector here to channel 3, and that would allow you to control the gains for the gyro on your remote. But if you can't use channel 3 and you're using like the stock electronics that's on the LDRC, then what's nice about the V5 board is that you can actually control the gyro right here from this knob, and that will change the gains right there on the board. The difference between the V6 and the V5 is that little knob. So if you get the V6 gyro, the DasMikro V6 gyro, it won't have that little knob on it, and you have to use an aftermarket receiver. I already have one on my wltoys K969 right here, and if you look, you can see there's no little knob on that board, and it's slightly different obviously than the V5 for that reason. And there's actually one less connector. I took off the 3-pin connector, so this connector was originally right here on this board. I just took it off because it was low profile on my car, so I needed to get the connector out of the way so it's not interfering with it. But the connector here is actually reversed compared to the pinout on this connector. So the ground was to the left, and then the signal was all the way, the ground was on the right and the signal was on the left over there. But on this one, it would be the ground is on the left, and then the power in the middle, and then signal is on the right. Now the back 4 would be ground, power, and then that would be signal to channel 1 and then signal to channel 3, which I desoldered the little connectors that were on there because they were just soldered right to the board. Like I said, they didn't have the 4-pin connector on the V6 board anymore. They got rid of that, and then there was no dial on there. So there's no way to control the gains for a V6 board unless you use an aftermarket radio and have one of these little knobs on your radio to control on usually channel 3, but you can put it on any channel you want. So that's the difference between the V5 and the V6, is that you cannot use the V6 with like these kind of stock electronics on the LDRC, because there is nowhere to hook up to channel 3 to control the gains off the remote, because it's a cheap remote. It doesn't have that. But the V5 is usable with the stock electronics. That's why everybody goes with this version and not the V6. So like I was saying, it comes with one of these connectors, and this connector will not work just out of the box with the LDRC. You will have to modify it, or you have to buy extension cables to change out these connectors to the right JST connectors to plug everything in, because these won't plug in to these JST connectors. So they're obviously different. So you need to get the extension pieces that have the opposite end to plug into here, and then it has one of these on the opposite end. And what I did was just chop mine up. You can see I just cut it, and then I soldered on one of these little JST connectors, because I got a bunch of these laying around from other projects. And then this is actually the 3-pin connector that was on the V6 that I desoldered off, and then I just soldered on one of these connectors, which is the opposite end of one of these. So this is because you're going to need this to plug in these stock servo or any other aftermarket servo that has the JST connector. You'll need this connector to plug that into if you don't want to direct solder anything, because you could always just cut the wires and then solder them directly, and that will work as well if you don't have these connectors. But If you can't do that, then you're gonna have to buy the extension cables, and that's gonna cost more money. So that's up to you. But that's the only way you can plug in one of these gyros into the LDRC, is if you have a connector right here to plug in to the same channel that's on this stock electronics here, where the servo is right now. And then you need this connector to plug the servo into, because the servo needs to go into this connector, and then this connector needs to work its way to the electronics. So I will do that real quick. So I'll unplug this little servo connector from the front pins, and you can see the signal is to the left, and then ground is all the way to the right. So make sure you remember that. And it's the very front pin, because these pins are for the servo for the headlights, the flip-up headlights on the car body. So I would just plug in the other end of this connector right there, and then take the servo and connect that to the other end there. And that completes the connection for the DasMikro gyro. Now, when it comes to placing the gyro onto the board or onto the car, there's many different places you could actually mount it. It really doesn't matter. I know there's a lot of debate on the best placement on where to put this gyro on the car is. But when it comes to gyros, it doesn't really matter where you place it. You can put it in the front, the back, the middle. I prefer to keeping it closer to the center, because most of the time gyros need to be in the center, axes of whatever you're mounting it on. And also the biggest problem with these little gyros is vibrations. You just don't want vibrations getting to the little chip right here on the board, because this is actually the gyro right here. This tiny little, that tiny little square right there, that's the gyro. And the gyro on the stock electronics, grab something to point with, is that board right there. So that's the stock gyro. And then this one's slightly bigger if you compare them side by side. So, and they look like they are InvenSense manufactured gyros, because I see a little tiny eye on the chip, and InvenSense is usually the main manufacturer for most gyros out there for like these little things. And like for my quadcopters and drones and stuff I build, most of my flight controllers have the InvenSense gyros in them, usually the MPU 6000 or the ICM 20602. There's a bunch of different little gyros and random little numbers and stuff for the name. But yeah, so InvenSense is a good manufacturer when it comes to gyros. They usually have really good, reliable gyros. So that's good to know that these gyros are made by InvenSense. All right, so I'm gonna probably mount it right here in the middle. I can demonstrate how it performs in the front and in the rear, because some of you might like putting it in the rear, and some think maybe in the front might be preferred. I'm actually just gonna go with the center, right in the middle, and at the highest point right here, because like I said, the biggest problem for these gyros is vibrations, and anywhere I can keep vibrations from getting to the little gyro, the better. So you just don't want it like touching anything that's gonna like transfer vibrations into this board, and then the gyro can work at its peak performance when it's nice and safe, away from everything else, especially like electrical noise as well. So you don't want any electrical noise getting to it. And I'm just gonna do one piece of double-sided tape right now for demonstration. I probably will do like about a 3-layer set of double-sided tape, so I can give it some anti-vibration, dampening. If not, if I really want to go crazy, I have some anti-vibration material wrapped in some double-sided tape here, and then vibrations coming from the car will have a really tough time getting through this stuff into the gyro. That's because I do the same thing with drones and stuff I have in the past, because you usually have to soft mount the gyros on drones to keep the vibrations from getting into the gyro, because that usually messes up the performance of the drone if vibrations from like the motors and stuff in the frame are getting to the gyro. So that's why I usually want to keep it away from areas that are going to be bouncy or shaky and everything. Like if I put it back here, I'm just worried because the motor and the drivetrain and everything in here, like all the gears and these drive shafts shaking, and then any bouncing and stuff going on back here, all the vibration that's going on back here will transfer into this area. So you got to really soft mount it back here to get the best performance out of the gyro. And you know, if you mount it back here and it works fine for you without putting that much, you know, dampening on it, then, you know, do your thing. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just, from my experience, I know gyros, you know, need to be isolated away from vibrations, so you kind of just want to keep them from like really shaky and bouncy places. I can't really put it up front here because of the servo from the headlights on the car body goes there, and there's just absolutely no room to put it up front. And still, I don't really like any vibrations and bounciness coming from the wheels getting into the gyro there. So I'm going to stick with putting it up front, and usually in the center is the best place where you want to put it. You don't have to mount it in the middle. It doesn't matter if it's off to the side, up front or back, whatever. It doesn't make a difference. As long as it's, you know, stable and stationary, it reads all, you know, the three axes, you know, just fine no matter where it is. And when it comes to cars, the only axis you really have to worry about is yaw, because you know, it's not a drone, it doesn't need roll and pitch, it's just yaw, because, you know, for steering. All right, so I'm going to do a quick tutorial on how to reverse the direction if the counter steer is wrong. Okay, so this reversing gyro setup is kind of confusing and a little weird, to be honest. But as you see right now, it's counter steering the correct way. That's how it should look when you plug it in and everything's working correctly. Should be going the opposite way of the back end. All right, so that's how it looks when it's normal. So I'm going to reverse this to be wrong, and I'll show you how to do that real quick. So I'm gonna turn off the car, make sure the radio is still on, hold the little button, turn on the car, let it do the fast flashing real quick, and then let go when it stops. Okay, so it should be slow blinking, and turn off the internal gyro so it doesn't do that weird shaking. So that's off now, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn the wheel to the right. Okay, and then turn the wheel to the left. And it should go to center every time. So right there, I reversed it to be the wrong way now. You see how it's going with the back end now? So this is how it looks if it's not counter steering correctly. And if I try to drive right now, the car will just spin out immediately and do circles. So this is wrong. And so I guess that's how you have to reverse it if you want to reverse it this way. But if you want to fix it from being reversed back to normal, then you have to do left first. So I'm going to demonstrate that real quick. So you can see it's wrong. So I'm going to turn the car off, leave the radio on, hold the button again, turn on the car, let it flash real quick, let off. Okay, it should be slow blinking, turn off the internal gyro. And now I'm going to go left first. And then I'm going to go right second. And that actually fixes it to where it's normal counter steering now. So that's how it should look with the gyro. But now if I want to set the endpoints, I would do the exact same method where I go left first and then right second. So I'll turn it off again. You can see that it's normal gyro now. Well, I turn off the car, sorry. Radio's on. So to adjust the endpoints for the servo, hold the button again, turn the car on again, let it flash, let go, turn off the internal gyro, then go left first, then right first. And that should set the endpoints. So if your gyro is already going the correct way, that's what you would do to set the endpoints to be correct. But the whole reversing the gyro thing is just kind of weird. So, I mean, as you can see, you know, if I went right first, it didn't like reverse it correctly. Like if it was wrong and I went right first, it wouldn't correct it back the other way. I'd have to do left first to correct that, and then left first to set the endpoints. But if the gyro was correct and I went right first, it would actually make the gyro the opposite, reverse it. So it's wrong. So I don't know, it's kind of funky how this is all set up. But yeah, that's all you have to do to get this gyro working correctly. Just do that sequence until you make sure you see the wheels counter steering the back end like that, and then you should be good to go. And then that's all you have to do to really set up the gyro, and just make sure it's mounted right. And on the little dial here, I'll put it to neutral. Sorry. So if you put it center like that, then the gyro's off. And if you counter steer, or not counter steer, but if you go, well, go clockwise is slow return, and that's the way I usually like it when I'm driving. So it should slowly come back, or at least kind of slow, but yeah, that's what it's supposed to do. And if you go the opposite way, if you go counterclockwise, it should be fast return. Yeah, so you can see it comes back quicker than the other direction did. So counterclockwise to the left will make it fast return, and then clockwise to the right there will make it slow return. And I'm gonna put it back the way I like it. So around there somewhere. So yeah, slow return, that's how I usually like to drift with it. So that's all you have to do if you want to set up the gyro and get the endpoints set, reversing it, and of course adjusting the gain right there on the board. So yeah, so that's all there is to mounting it. Like I said, when it comes to gyros and stuff, they don't really matter where you place them as long as they're not getting a lot of vibrations. I mean, I've been building quads, little tiny drones and quadcopters for years, and usually they have them right in the center because that's just the best place for them to keep the noise from, like, say, motors getting to the gyro. And usually these gyros are 6-axis, so it's, the 3-axis, and then for the gyro, and then 3-axis for the accelerometer, which I don't really fly with the accelerometer on. And I was looking at this board, I don't know if this gyro has an accelerometer built in as well. It doesn't look like it. It looks like it's too small to really have accelerometer and a gyro built in. So I don't know if this board underneath is just, if it's an accelerometer or if it's the actual little controller, like the board that you set it through. And this is just a gyro, or if this is a gyro and accelerometer. So I've been looking online to find any specs on these chips on here, and I can't really find anything, so I'm just kind of guessing at this moment. But if they're anything like gyros that are on little quadcopters and stuff, I mean, I've been building these things forever, and they usually put them in the center of the boards, the flight controllers, and then usually we have to isolate the vibrations from the frame because a lot of the motors and everything create a lot of vibrations to the frame, and then they get into the flight controller, and then if they get to the gyro, it messes with the performance of it, and then sometimes it'll make them just take off on their own, and you got to tune out the noise that's getting to them. So we soft mount them with like rubber grommets and stuff to keep the vibrations from the frame and the motors from getting into the flight controller to get to the gyro. So I mean, I've been building these things for a long time, and back in the day, that was one of our biggest issues, was vibrations from the motors going through the frame into the gyro, and it would mess with the performance of the drone to where we couldn't even fly them if you had too much noise getting into them. So yeah. So I've been messing with these things for a long time, and I've been learning a lot about these gyros and flight controllers and everything. But I feel like these gyros are kind of a bit expensive for what they are, because these little flight controllers, they have 4 ESCs, an OSD chip, a VTX built in, a receiver built in, and a gyro with an accelerometer and everything. Usually around, and all that built into one little board for 40 bucks. And then they're selling these gyros by themselves basically for 20 to 40 bucks. I mean, to me, it seems like a ripoff. But I've been dealing with drones, for about a decade and stuff. But I'm, somewhat new to the RC car world for the past couple of years, and they're still trying to catch up, I think, when it comes to technology. Like it is with drones and everything, because when it came to drones, like all the electronics and everything blew up within like the past 5 years, and we pretty much plateaued and peaked where you can't really make them any better than they are now. So Yeah, so that's all you gotta do to set these up. I'm gonna do another video here soon on some other things for this guy, so stay tuned for that. Once again, thank you for your time, and I hopefully will see you in the next one.